Ron Spomer here to talk about rifle scopes for general purpose North American big game hunting. If you're like me, you like to hunt a little bit of everything. So you want an all-round scope that'll handle everything from close range deer in the thick woods to long range sheep on the mountains or coyotes. And a good all-round scope is not always that easy to find. There are so many on the market these days. What exactly do you look for? Obviously all scopes look like a black tube. How do we know what's in there and what we need? Well, let's start with the objective lens. That's the big one out front. That lets the light into the scope. The bigger it is, the brighter your scope is going to be. But the bigger it is, the higher you have to mount your scope up off the rifle, and that ends up having to put your head up so high you don't get a good cheek weld. So you don't want it too big. Also, it's a little bulkier, a little more difficult to haul around because it's going to weigh a little bit more. This is a 50 millimeter, and that's a good top end size. You don't always need 50, but by golly, that's going to bring in all the light you need, especially when you crank up your magnification. Magnification or power is something we're always interested in. And that, of course, comes from a variable scope in which you can dial your power up and down. This one is a 4 to 12, which is a good range. Now here's the thing about magnification. As it increases, as your power gets turned up, regardless of how big your objective is and how much light comes in, turning up the power reduces the amount of light that gets out. If you can see into this little eyepiece, you'll see a little tiny speck of light. That's called the exit pupil. At 12 power, it's really tiny. As I turn that power down toward 4, it gets bigger. That means more light's going to get out to go into your eye. The exit pupil coming out of the eyepiece of your scope measures up with your own pupil, and the human pupil will dilate to about 7 millimeters in really low light situations. But in the middle of the day like this, you're going to be able to shrink that thing down to 2.5 millimeters. So you need to correlate this with your eye. If you want to get maximum brightness through that eyepiece into your eye, you'll need an exit pupil matching the diameter of your own pupil. Well, here's how you figure that size out. You can literally go up there and measure it with a millimeter ruler, or you can do the math. And that is to divide the objective lens diameter by the power. So if this is the 50 and you have it set on 5 power, you've got a 10 millimeter exit pupil. That's huge, 3 times bigger than your pupil could get. So you really don't need that big of an objective up front. But if you crank that power up to 10, now suddenly 10 goes into 50, 5 times, you've got a 5 millimeter exit pupil. Started to get a little bit smaller. Now you crank it up to 12 and it's smaller yet. That's why you need a bigger objective. The higher your magnification, the more objective you want to keep that light up. Now what I found is that most scopes, if they're properly treated, are going to give you adequate brightness with a 5 millimeter or even a 4 millimeter on that exit pupil, as long as you've got something essential on your lenses, and those are called anti-reflection coatings. And that is a big deal. Here's what happens. Raw glass reflects about 4% of the light that strikes it, and then about another 4% that tries to get out of it. So at each lens, you're going to lose about 8% of your light. If you put an anti-reflection coating on there, you'll cut that light loss in half. And that's a big deal. And then if you put more coatings on it, you cut it in half again and again and again. This is really great because those anti-reflection coatings don't weigh anything. They don't make your scope bigger, but man, do they increase the brightness. So always look for fully multi-coated optics in your rifle scope. That is going to give you the brightest object you can possibly get, regardless how big or small your objective lens is or your power. Everything about this scope impresses me in this S3 4 to 12 by 50. It has a lifetime guarantee that covers everything but theft, loss, and intentional damage. And get this, Styrka will clean and tune this scope free of charge once a year. Now, this Styrka S3 scope is fully multi-coated. That means every lens surface, inside and out, has multiple layers of anti-reflection coatings to minimize reflection loss and, of course, maximize light passage. And this Styrka S3 is definitely worth a look.
It even comes with a cleaning cloth and a neoprene cover. You might want to check it out.